Welcome everyone to a quick update. Let's talk about AMD's state of their P-state CPU frequency scaling driver for Linux. I probably made a video some time ago about that. I was at that time testing on a Ryzen 5950X and even 3950X. Not impressed. At that time, using the P-state driver usually hurt performance noticeably, like 5, 6, 7%. And I'm certainly not buying the latest and greatest, fastest, epic thread ripping enthusiast silicon and overclock and undervolt and memory subtiming tune that to piss the performance away with AMD CPU frequency scaling drivers. So as it's every other day in the news, I tested the very latest driver here. And so I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is with the right tuning settings, it no longer hurts performance. So what that means is, for my case, I have one of the highest Geekbench scores now on my epic overclocking system, especially single core and multi-core. However, with Geekbench or other such short benchmarks, I have the problem that these benchmarks are too short. Like if I run it 10 times, I get 10 other, like you boot, you run it 10 times, you get 10 different reports, depending on thermal headroom, how much your CPU is, cooling system is pre-warmed, boosting and scheduling, even scheduling on differently boosting CPU cores and stuff. So yeah, you can get 24,901, you get 25,116 this time. But this was usually I run it and the score is not perfect, and I run it again, it's a little bit better, and so on, and then like the fifth. So this was actually the first run, or the second. Let me just. But so usually I need to run 5 times to get perfect performance, and so this was the first. All right, so even the first multi, and there you see. But honestly, this is relatively consistent. So maybe the latest AMD P-state driver scheduling can improve preferred core scheduling somewhat, maybe. Because, so not only are this one of the highest results, it's also with 2 runs the most consistent. However, hear me out. So it's like, yeah, multi-score can be higher and stuff with boosting and thermals and stuff. So that is pretty high, obviously. Probably if it comes to low, it's maybe higher than many other people undervolt and boost their 1750X. So that is good news, right? Can be also with tuning the right knobs. So that means like this, wherever that was of P-state, probably this one. And so that is this. All right, this is this. Probably some P-state dynamic boost. So this is currently also not the latest patch set, because the latest patch set, I have some comments in a second. So this was P-state dynamic boost set to enabled, and also with, and that is also the thing, right? Out of the box, you do not get this results if you want performance. It's like the only constant is change and tweaking this FS and ProcFS. That is also with scaling governors set to performance. Is that all? That might be all. I'm also a little bit disappointed that this currently does apparently maybe not work together with schedutil. So, but the really disappointing stuff, I mean, not only you need to tune that, which may or may not be fine. If you don't tune that, you get better energy efficiency, but on the desktop, of course, the only substitute for performance is more performance. But the really bad thing is, in my opinion, some news sites applaud this latest patch set from here, I guess, making it easier to enable that. And I find that actually really annoying. And also news sites should maybe do more of their due diligence and testing. So previously, even the first time I wanted to enable that maybe a year ago, AMD P-state on an 59 or 3950X, it didn't work out of the box, right? I had to read the kernel sources, I had to read the documentation, I had to reboot, fiddle and debug and stuff until I realized back in that day, maybe that was a 3950X, because that didn't have the register model specific registers, MSRs, and that had shared memory, right? So it was a learning curve of it was not working out of the box. It, in my opinion, also a stupid choice when you already build and load the module. It should maybe work. You had at that time pass AMD P-state, something shared memory or whatever to enable this lesser performance. Also, it's AMD's fault also to manufacture and ship CPUs with a not as performant interface or shared memory interface. So sure, okay, I get it. 2 years ago, at least with desktop enthusiast stuff in the day. But I mean, honestly, if you know that, then like you mod probe it with shared memory, fine. Or you just, I mean, making it easier, making it the default that if you load this driver, you get what you ask for. So what they changed now, which I found rather confusing, is first I built the Linux kernel and the module wasn't even in there. AMD P-state new. And so they changed this, making it easier. They changed this tree-state AMD processor P-state driver to a Boolean, right? So that means it is always, so with all the other infrastructure changes, so making it easier for dummy, am I allowed to say this, for Joe home users, like building it into the freaking kernels, like do. So for me, this is a step back, right? For me, it's actually a major step back because I want my kernel as minimal as possible, because if I build it into the kernel, it is always in the kernel. Like imagine if we would have everything built into the kernel and you would have a 20 megabyte kernel image, right? I want the most minimal core kernel and then all the driver modules optionally loaded, because that means you boot on Intel, you boot on VR, you have this stuff in your kernel. Yeah. And additionally, so this is one thing, so I find that really annoying, right? And also, due to the nature of that, it wasn't enabled, right? I built the kernel, I rebooted AMD P-state wasn't there. Like, making it easier, I rebuilt the kernel, and the driver is literally not in there, because instead of being a module, it's a bloody Boolean, which wasn't turned on. So making it so easy that I had to build a second kernel, and yeah. And maybe then even I wanted to enable some parameter and I had to reboot because it wasn't a module and I couldn't write. It probably was like enable CPP, whatever. Yeah. So this I don't find ideal, right? This is also like making it easier and making it, in my opinion, probably somewhat worse. It's, yeah. The second thing is, this driver started to oops, right? And initially I thought when I booted that today, like oops, like that. So that is my currently running system, right? You get the latest and greatest AMD state of CPU frequency, scaling, performance, and efficiency, and all you get is some random oopses, right? This is here on secondary startup, CPU startup, idle, call CPU idle stuff. Yeah. So this currently is not the latest driver. That is the previous, I believe, version 3. This is version 4. So probably this oops is currently with version 3 from 2 months or so ago. Because then I reverted that and rebuilt that as a module, like how I like it, of having it optionally loaded if you want to use it. And so now I got similar oopses, because initially I thought, like, the only constant is change and regressions. AMD's amazing engineers caused a new regression, but wow. I get a bit higher performance and lower base frequency, but I now get oopses. And this is with version 3, so it's unfortunately not a regression in version 4, but a regression with version 3 already. This might be multiple. The first oops here was in kernel SMP call function single. No idea what's exactly going on there with write role specific register long save on CPU AMD P-state CPPC update hook. It's like due. And the biggest thing is I quite don't understand some things, which two of which is, how can it be that big mega corporations like AMD and Intel not only don't have this relatively core features ready at launch day, but 2 years later, with a 5000 and 7000 Zen 3 and 4 generation, it's still not ready for prime time. And not only do they still randomly change that of like, let's make it a built-in, let's like, no, module is too difficult. And even still have random oopses. So that is in AMD P-state set policy and the other CPU idle enter. And I don't think it is related to my undervolting and overclocking and memory subtimings, because not only do I currently run with a little bit scaled back values because too much undervolting and PBO, performance boost optimizing curves, and memory subsystems of course cause the more you get to the, like, you remove the fail-safe safety margins and stuff, of course you can get stuff building, but if you let it idle for an hour or at night, or you build like 24/7, eventually something oopses and or resets and reboots it. So this is currently with safer dialed back numbers of at times quite a bit of safety margin dialed back of my overclocking. And I previously have run 24, if not 48 hours constantly epic thread ripping building with that. And this happens within minutes, right? Okay, I could test actually booting with BIOS safe defaults and see if I still get this, but I don't think this looks too reproducible at AMD ACPI idle and CPPC callback stuff. That, yeah. So major, I mean, the other thing is, so that's basically it, right? It doesn't suck as much anymore, at least on Ryzen 7000. I don't have the time. Like, if you shall like subscribe, maybe I should hire an assistant to go, and because I don't even want to reboot remote bug the office machines where we have the 3000 and 5000 in running in production. But the whole state of this, right, and that big mega corporations get away with this, and you can't argue anymore, but this is not Windows, right? Nobody cares. Not only the market share of servers is rather high for Linux, and then there's also stuff like the Steam Deck and stuff, right? So in 2022, you would expect that the stuff eventually be more solid. And last but not least, I find it rather crazy that this AMD P-state is using generic ACPI standards, as they even write here. So the current are using P-state driver, manage CPU frequency, clock with switching only 3 P-states. CPPC replaces the ACPI P-state controls and allows flexible low latency interface for the Linux kernel to directly communicate performance hints to the hardware. Which again, it is crazy, right? For 2 years, it always decreased performance. Now it's the same performance, or maybe a tiny bit better after 2 years. But then this also was supposed to be a ACPI standard, right? Collaborative processor performance control. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, why we can't have nice things. I mean, not only 2 years and it's not stable, but there was a standard, and similar to other things, this stuff should be standardized, right? Why do we have different drivers for Intel and AMD? Sure, implementation details and so on, yada, yada, yada. But why is there not an industry standard agreement of people to implement their hardware against? Because now we have 2 different drivers that both suck differently. Thank you very much. And this interface enumerates a continuous, abstract, and unitless performance value in a scale that's not tied to a specific performance state frequency. Yes, exactly how you would want it with different processor manufacturers. This is an ACPI standard. Amazing. Which software can specify application performance goals and hints as a relative target to the infrastructure limits. AMD's processor provides the low latency register model MSR instead of AML code interpreter for performance adjustments. And that also, ladies and gentlemen, is why ACPI sucks. And AML, by the way, similar to Java bytecode, some performance, interpreted abstract bytecode. So for like performance and whatnot, like why does ACPI suck so much, and why is there a standard in ACPI where big AAA vendors like AMD say, you know what, your whatever, this standard sucks and not high performance AML code interpreter. We have a custom AMD proprietary model specific register to initialize and work with this callbacks to manage its performance update behavior. It's like you had one job, and it's not like ACPI is forced upon them. It is simply what all the big giants of Intel, Microsoft, and AMD worked on and created for 20 years. And here we are, 2022. Hey, there is a standard, but the stuff sucks so much. We do it differently anyway. So like only partially using ACPI standard for a little bit. And yeah, there is some others. So some of the stuff is read-only. You get there some values of whatever they mean. You can set there some desired performance targets. Actually, I think, also, by the way, I think, as far as I remember, it came out here a little bit strange. I think it came up by default with, here's this energy performance preference set to performance. So that is, so you have default performance, balance power. So apparently it came up with performance. However, the scaling governor was set to power save. It's like, I'm not really sure how much the scaling governor makes a difference here, but maybe not much. But anyway, a little bit inconsistent, and yeah, it's, last but not least, in summary, mostly disappointing, especially for 2+ years of work. Not even fully in mainline Linux, because here's patch version 4, which still randomly oopses for me. I could do like, if you shall like subscribe, Patreon, I could reboot with BIOS reset to save values and see if it oopses the same, but probably it will. Also, it is funny that they mostly talk about energy, right? So this is one last thing. They sent here, this patch implements CPU frequency scaling, AMD EP state EPP, and so this value here, frequency according to the EPP preference value, so this EPP and will impact the CPU code's frequency responsiveness, which is probably what I've seen previously of degrading performance. What I said is probably not scaling up enough, and I find it rather crazy. So they have here power improvement, so I guess around performance. So maybe because you get more performance, that even decreases power PPP, or was it power or whatever. But I find it crazy that they don't have here some like compile benchmark, right? You only have here power and so on, throughput, megabyte. But I would also like time to like volt clock kernel compiler stuff, because as nice as this table is, it certainly took quite some effort to create this, and we probably would have to reboot a dozen times here for that. But I, last but not least, would actually, like this numbers do not tell me that much, except used energy, which for some areas, and that's also the problem, right? Everyone has different requirements, so you can't like fit energy efficiency and high performance scaling to all of it. However, I would anyway say, if you need performance, even a data center on this epic Rome servers, like when I'll save power and when you need performance, but maybe that is oversimplification. So I had run, which of these many are this even? So I previously run ACPI, so that is baseline. This is what I had run, and that is a throughput. So apparently, interesting that they have a higher throughput. And there you see, actually, I carefully benchmarked it previously, and I came away a year ago that ACPI CPU frequency schedule gave me the best Linux kernel compile. But here it looks that gives you less throughput in T-bench. So yeah, whatever, I guess, energy, but also consume more energy, right? So yeah, by the way, so this would be ACPI, AMD, P-state. Actually, would this be EPP performance? Yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. It is kind of... I don't regularly test that every month because it's also somewhat a waste of time, right? Why should I even keep testing that when 2 years ago it decreased performance and now it can be good, but randomly, oops, like, do you want to run something in production that gives you warnings there of, I don't know. It's probably should be more standardized and that there should be like one good ACPI driver. But yeah, that is probably visual thinking. Probably in my lifetime, we will not have that anymore. We probably have Apple Silicon custom CPU frequency scaling and stuff. Anyway, that's this was video. Leave in the comments what you think. Given that it's barely faster and often not saving much energy, maybe it's not much worth to talk about. Anyway, after all, hope you learned something. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and hope to see you soon for next fun videos and stuff to come. Someone asked what Linux distro are we using? We are using our own, right? Nothing like 1957 Linux distributions. Of course, we run the best Linux distribution where everything is kind of patchwork. I also have to wonder if, I mean, maybe I should stop being a perfectionist because I'm not even sure what I will do if Linus Torvalds applies that as that, which maybe he won't. If I should maintain a patch to make it module, because I don't, but maybe that is a waste of time. I probably should work on a microkernel. So there's comment having a Ryzen 5 5500U laptop using P-state kernel, the frequency logs at horrible 400 megahertz and in conservative it jumps. Well, for me, 400 megahertz base is intended and that could save energy. But even when in the default setting, it's scaling up for me, right? So not really sure. Maybe a Linux distribution has some stuff strangely built in, but yeah, that is what I mentioned earlier. So I could that you remind me the other benefit, which we knew already, you get a lower base clock of 400 megahertz instead of 3400, which could save energy, but in my case it doesn't. It's idling. So like with this 1750X and this NZXT Kraken Z73, it is idling at 29 degree. So actually the other reason I actually wanted to maybe switch to that is save some idle energy, but yeah, it's apparently not really. I mean, for me it's also crazy that so many cores idling at 400 instead of 3400 do not save much energy, but apparently it's not noticeable in this cooling situation. Maybe I should actually take a closer look and see what's going on with this. Oops. Maybe I think, so for me it defaulted to power save, right? I'm not sure what's going on with you. For me with power save it also boosted. But who knows what's going on there. But yeah, the only constant is change and regressions. See you next time. And leave me in the comments below what you think and what's your experiences.